Hello and welcome to Mystic Visions with DrShiny. This is a monthly tarot card reading for Cancer for the month of March. If you are not a subscriber, please go ahead and subscribe, and I am willing to draw some extra cards for anybody who is a subscriber. So leave a comment if you would like that, and I will go ahead and do it. And also, just give me some feedback. I love to hear from people what you think about the reading, and if it was resonating with you. You're the reason I do it, so let me know if it helps. So I'm going to do my variation of a Celtic cross today, and this is, of course, a general reading, so it's not going to resonate with everybody, but should give you a little bit of good general guidance here. Okay. All right. So, your current situation is the Empress. So the Empress is a very nurturing, mother-like energy. This is sometimes involved with a pregnancy, motherhood, that type of thing, or just nurturing a project. It's often very creative, that you've got something that you're wanting to work on, that you're wanting to do, and this is a sort of universal feeling of creativity, and it has to be nurtured. It has to be sort of babied, because it doesn't just happen of itself all the time. You have to put in some effort or some work. Even really advanced creative people who will tell you, when I'm doing something, it's like it's creating itself. Well, okay, yeah, I get that, but you're still putting your hand to a paper. You're still acting, right? You're still nurturing in that sort of way. And so you can look at it that way, because when you have a child, you're not growing the child, you're just giving the child what it needs, and it comes to be of itself. But that's actually a good lesson in creativity, as a little sidebar here, that a lot of times people try to force something to be created, and really a lot of times it feels, when you're creating something great, it feels like it's creating itself, and it's just using you as sort of a vessel. So what we have crossing you is the Three of Coins here, and I'll pull that up for you. The Three of Coins has three guys who are hard at work building a cathedral, and they have to collaborate together. They have to put in a joint effort, and each of them brings something different to the table, but they have to work together to be able to get this done. So this is sort of crossing you. So what that can mean is that there is maybe a little bit of difficulty with this. It may be something that, with that Empress, it can be a little overbearing or protective. That can mean that, you're wanting to do this more yourself, and you're not wanting other input. But it's kind of a tough lesson to learn, because a lot of times you don't know best. You might think you do, but it's going to be more effective if you're able to recognize when you really should seek out help or somebody else's input for what's going on. Now, what you're moving away from is this Eight of Swords in the reverse. This one kind of represents being trapped by your own thoughts, or feeling like there's no way out, or just being resistant to try to make a path for yourself, right? This is, you're coming out of this energy. So in the past, maybe you felt like your hands were tied a little bit, or you didn't have a lot of control over the situation. So that could be kind of what's leading you to what you're feeling right now, of like really wanting to retain that control, really wanting to keep a grasp on it, in order for you to kind of feel that empowerment that you've been missing in the past. But what you're moving toward is this Queen of Coins. Interesting that this is a very, very similar energy to the Empress. However, this is in the reverse in this case. So, it can mean that part of what's going on here, part of you needing to learn this lesson of this Three of Coins, is what's necessary for you to sort of master the cultivation or nurturing aspects of yourself. And you're kind of being resistant to that, or being a little too selfish about the way that you nurture something, or not trusting other people is kind of a hang up for you here. It's leading you to not do the best things. So it could be, I'm seeing overprotectiveness, and if it's not of a child, it's of like a project or something. Sometimes you have to reach out to other people, other experts, to be able to help you. And if you don't trust those people, then well, you're taking your fate into your own hands. But that can not always be a positive, right? Because sometimes you're not the best person to be in control of some aspect of a project or a situation. Now, what's the foundation for this whole thing is the Justice card. And Justice a lot of times has it's very much about logic and kind of rules and how things turn out, which is to say, in this situation, well, let me back up a hair. The foundation is kind of like what is being taught to you through this situation. So, the situation is just kind of a scenario, but there's a bigger truth that's going on here, something that's being taught to you through this scenario. So whether it's raising a child or working on a project or whatever it is in your particular situation, what's actually being taught to you is this idea of justice, which means, first of all, you have to be able to think about things rationally and logically. You have to be able to recognize who you can and cannot trust. You also have to be able to be accountable for the consequences of that trust or of your interactions with others. So part of it is knowing who to trust and who not to trust, but it doesn't mean not trusting anyone, right? And so there's going to be some outcomes here, which are the result of your choices. And so it's really about, it doesn't even look like the cards are cautioning you to go one way or the other, with the exception of, needing to put some focus on figuring out who to trust. But it's not so much that it's going to go one way or the other, but it's important for you to kind of learn from the situation and to remember this. So somebody may be showing you their true colors in this situation. And it's going to probably be very important for you to remember this at some point later on. So, this is one of those situations where it's like, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Okay? So, and it's not looking dire or anything like that, but somebody is probably revealing to you, really, whether you should trust them or not. Now, your crowning thoughts, what's on your mind, is this Fool card. And the Fool, this is kind of interesting because the Fool kind of goes with the flow. I'm seeing a little bit of trepidation in the current situation. So why this is on the crowning thoughts is a little odd to me. So I'm thinking of it in two real possible ways of interpreting. One of them is that you kind of want to be this way. You feel like you ought to be this way. So you've been thinking about that and you're wondering, how can I be a little bit more relaxed or easy about this? And if that's the case, then that kind of that changes this a little bit, and it can mean that you have these sort of natural inclinations to not trust, but it's important, I think. Let me think of a scenario here. If you're worried about your child going off on their own, or maybe they got their license and they're wanting to go off driving or something like that, and you're worried about whether or not you should trust that, part of this situation is not about you and your ability to trust what's right and wrong, but it's about them learning, right? So if you refuse to allow them to get into situations that have a certain risk or something like that, then you're not giving them the opportunity to figure out how they should trust people, right? So that could be a possible interpretation of this. You're thinking about carelessness and about recklessness, and you may be right. There may be carelessness and recklessness in this situation, but without allowing some of that to play out on its own, you could be basically not allowing somebody to learn those lessons on their own, and that could work out very badly for them in the long run. So it's a cruel scenario where you feel on the one hand that you ought to prevent somebody from harm, but on the other hand, is preventing them from harm, preventing them from learning something, right? So to me, I'm a new parent myself, and to me, the balance that I strike is it is better for them to be in a situation where they can fail safely before they get into a more dire situation where failure is really a problem. You know what I mean? So I try to look for opportunities to let up instead of controlling the situation at every single turn, instead of guiding every step of the way. I think it's important to step back as much as possible. And then the added benefit of that is that they tend to seek out my advice or my input, instead of feeling like it's always being given and they don't want it, right? So, and that's a balance that everybody has to find. But what we have for your advice is the Ace of Wands in the reverse. This right here. So this often has a lot to do with timing. Something you're expecting something to work out a certain way, or you want something to occur, but it doesn't happen when you want it to occur. There's like a delay, or it just it's kind of like it's kind of like you're expecting a check in the mail, but like the bank got it wrong, and so it's going to be delayed a few days or something like that. Or you really wanted to achieve something, and you just haven't heard back on it yet. So this is kind of what's going on here. How that pertains to your advice in this situation. Sometimes you can prevent things from happening by being a little bit too focused on them or fixated on them. And it doesn't allow sort of the space for the universe to work, and to deliver you the things that you're after. So sometimes it's about kind of letting go a little bit and letting things happen on their own. And what you have for your environment is the Hermit. So this can be some solitude, but it's not solitude so much in the way of like loneliness. This is the Hermit right here. It's not so much loneliness, or that you're not wanting to be alone. This can be good solitude. So this gives you opportunities to self-reflect, or take some me time, some opportunity to recharge your batteries, and get some things done around the house, that kind of thing. So when this comes up, particularly in this position, like in the environment, what I think that is telling you is to try to make the most of your time and occupy your mind, instead of like getting too worried about things or feeling like things are not the way they should be. And that's really going to serve you well in this situation. Now, your fears card is the Strength. And so, the Strength is kind of the opposite of fears. So that's interesting. But so what's going on here, let me pull this card up for you. Okay, so this lady, and this card almost always shows a young girl or woman who is caressing a beast, a lion or some sort of scary monster, and it could gobble her up really easily if it wanted to. But the idea here is that she has such a faith, or a inner will and strength, that the lion, recognizes her almost as an equal, because she's not at all, the lion typically encounters fear when he comes up to something, because everything is prey for a lion, right? It can eat anything. The only thing that lions don't really eat usually is their own kind, right? And so they aren't really afraid of each other, but everything else is kind of afraid. So she presents herself in with this stoicism of, I'm totally not afraid, everything's fine. And that is what allows her, or basically what allows her to approach this lion. And the lion actually, basically gives her some of his strength by being there, because nobody's going to come near her while that lion is right there, right? So the idea here, it's not so much physical strength, but it's more of willpower, or steadfast stoicism, right? So that's the idea here with strength. This is in your fears position, so it may be that you're a little bit afraid to have that kind of a fear. You may think that you're doing people a favor by being worried about them, and I don't know how else to say it except that you're not. You're not doing people a favor by worrying too much about them. Some worry is just love, is concern, and it's not something that you should get rid of, but you have to realize that sometimes you could be doing them a disservice by worrying too much and not allowing things to develop on their own. Now your overall message here is the 10 of coins, and this is also your long-term outcome. And what this is saying really is that things are going to be fine. Things are going to work out well. There's going to be some mistakes will be made on the way, and there'll be some difficulties, some obstacles to get over. But in the long run, this is success. Here's a grandpa. Let me put this one in the... There's a grandpa, and there's dogs, and there's children, and even grandchildren here, right? So this is to say that things do work out in the long run, and a lot of your concerns are really just either unwarranted or something that you're going to have to try to get over a little bit. Don't let it take you until you're this old man sitting alone to figure out how to let go, how to relax, because all that time that you spend worrying, oftentimes, that's thinking about the future. A really good quote that I heard one time is that if you are angry, if you're feeling an excess of anger, you have too much of a focus on the past. And if you have too much fear or anxiety, you have too much of a focus on the future. So what you're going to want is to find a little bit of focus on the present moment, on being there, on existing and being happy. And if you're able to do that, it has a way of making others attracted to you. And I'm not just saying like in a romantic or relationship type of way, but even like your family. Your family is going to be more on board with being around you if you can live in the moment instead of like being always thinking about what might happen or what could happen in the future or anywhere but present, right? So that's about it for Cancer today. Pretty good reading. Again, if you are a subscriber, please let me know in the comments if you'd like some extra cards, and I'll draw some for you. And let me know what you thought. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.